congrats on all your success and all your media coverage. How many things have you been in at this point?
ABC, I mean, I think Good Morning America tomorrow, CNN, I was like Access Hollywood, Complex on Instagram, LAD Bible, or was it pronounced Lad Bible? I forgot. I don't know how they pronounce that. There's like 40 million followers there, man. CNN, Daily Mail, bro. I mean, I don't know, man. It's been a lot. I can't really keep track right now.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a lot. What's that like for you? Do you have any experience with all that sort of media stuff before?
Not to this level, but back when I was winning a whole bunch of competitions when I was fighting, it was something similar. At least as far as people coming in my Instagram DMs, Facebook DMs, things like that.
Wow, that's wild, dude. So I'd love to just chat with you a little bit about your experience, your LSAT journey, your law school admissions journey, because it is really inspiring for a lot of folks. So anything you could share about the process that you think would help future pre-law applicants specifically, I think would be really useful.
So my LSAT prep was kind of unique. I'll say that. Unique in the sense where the only reason why I even started studying, most people don't know this. I'm going to add this for background because it might apply to whoever is watching. As a matter of fact, I was the first dual commencement speaker in the history of the university. I was the one for the big university in front of those thousands of people and the history department's graduation the next day. So, had a whole bunch of job opportunities, got really sick after graduation though, and lost all my job opportunities. I was pretty much like horribly sick for probably like 7 months. And literally the only reason why I started studying for the LSAT was because my cousin Dominic ended up coming to me and showed me a Steve Harvey video about when he tried to get onto the Apollo. It was like this motivational video, right? So from there, I said, okay, I'm gonna study for this LSAT. And so this is where it begins. I visited Harvard like a couple months back, and then I met this girl who gave me access to a lot of prep material, right? So it's one of those things. On one end, I had the test ready. On another end, I couldn't find what was going to make it work because that was only half the battle. I had the questions right in front of me, but now I keep getting them wrong. And it was just really hard, specifically because I had to wake up like every day around like 5 o'clock. Once I started getting healthy enough to work again, I had to wake up at 5, study till like 7:30, maybe 8. Then I would hop on the train to go to DC. Then I'd come back home. And then I went to the library from like 7 to 11. And I did that for like a period of like maybe 3 months while feeling nauseated 24 hours a day, which really sucked. So that was pretty much it, man. I mean, literally, it was trial and error. I had to find out what worked. There was so many times people said, this is going to work or that's going to work because it worked for them. Me personally, I just think there's no formulaic way to go about the LSAT. You just have to find what's your fit.
Right. So you try out different things. You saw what didn't work. You saw what worked. You experimented. You kept going at it. And you also put in the hours. You also put in the hours at the library day after day after day. How long were you studying for the LSAT overall in terms of a number of months?
Overall, I would have to say, let's say 20 months.
20 months. So that's over a year and a half, close a year and a half to 2 years.
I started in my junior year of college, but I wasn't intense. It's just kind of, I wanted to familiarize myself with the material. But mind you, from junior year and senior year, I didn't really get any better. My first score was a 139.
Wow.
Then I got sick, and then I had to like kind of relearn my stamina, and then I was able to break through the 160s.
So you started at a 139, then you were at the 150s, then you were at the 160s, and where did you ultimately end up with your score?
Well, for my prep, I started getting consistent 168. So that became my average. I had a couple 170s, but my 168, that was like where I was on test prep. On test day, it was actually 161. I'll never forget that day. I literally forgot to eat breakfast that day. And by section 2, I was done. I wanted to cancel my score. The only reason why I didn't was because every admissions counselor that I talked with told me I had the most impressive resume out of any law student they've ever seen.
So let's talk about that a little bit then. So resume, what was it compelling about it?
It's probably the most holistic resume. I'm not going to say but it's probably one of the most holistic resumes you can ever see. Let's just start with art for a second. I played the piano. Well, that's just one. I mean, I have like some type of, artistic merit in there, right? Two, extracurriculars. I won international and national championships for fighting
What kind
all
of fighting?
throughout my life. Martial arts specifically. And then I was trained under an Olympic boxing coach. So that pretty helped. He trained Sugar Ray Leonard and Andrew Maynard, two Olympic gold medalists. One went on to become one of the greatest boxers of all time. So that was good for the sports end. For the academic end, starting from college, I mean, I was the president of mentorship organizations. I was the ambassador for Bowie State University in 2015. High GPA. And then it's a lot of the other stuff that I did while at Bowie State. I tutored ex-convicts. I got kids that had less than 2.0. I guided kids on the application process for those who had 2.0s or below, and all of them got into 4-year institutions with scholarship. And literally, I hosted I hosted one of the biggest college expos for Black students, where like thousands of kids get to skip the fees and all of that nature, and then they just go there, they get accepted, denied, waitlisted on the spot. So I was a part of all that at Bowie State, right? On top of the high GPA, while working during some of those semesters, I was working full time as a Garbageman, and I transferred to the University of Maryland. The first semester there, I become the president of the History Undergraduate Association as a transfer student. After that, I get promoted not promoted, but then I get appointed to be to the Dean's Advisory Board as a history representative. From there, I get appointed to be on the Dean's Cabinet as the sole student representative of the College of Arts and Humanities. From there, I go on to be the commencement speaker of the university. From there, I go on to become the commencement speaker of the History Undergraduate University the following day. And it's I'm doing all that while working. Now that I was working while full-time as a garbage man.
So how did you manage all of that? Because I feel like most people would even struggle to do just one or two of these things.
Well, it's just about knowing your why. I mean, I always have this morbid joke, but I mean, I don't mean it. It's supposed to be lighthearted, but it's a thing between my friends and I, right? But I always tell my friends yo, I died when I was 8. And then after that, I just kept moving until I get to the promised land. Meaning, after when I turned 8 years old, a lot of things went wrong in my life. And then I just saw how cruel the world can be. And so I was used to being uncomfortable. I was used to, people being cruel towards me. I was used to jokes. So, even if I had to walk on campus in my horrible trash outfit and, people were making jokes, I'm like, well, I've been through worse. That's cool. That's fine. I've been tired, man. My dad used to have me work out at 3 a.m. in the morning, then go to high school. You know what I'm saying? So I'm used to that work. So again, knowing your why, my dad had a stroke working 3 jobs, helping me go to school. So in my mind, it's well, I got to finish school or this was for nothing. I got to thrive, not just finish. I have to thrive or what was the point? Anyone could get a degree, but if you did all of this, I have to really step my game up. So literally, I was going to do it for my dad. My brother dropped out of school so I could go to school. And that's a whole nother story within itself. So you really just have to know your why. And if you don't know why you want to go to law school, unless you're a genius, I don't see someone being able to really push through the LSAT, because when I was in the 130s, I was able to get to the 140s pretty easily, right? But once I hit that 150s, especially once I got to 155, that process from 155 to 160 anything on prep tests literally took 6 months within itself.
Just that last little bit.
Oh man, once you got to 150, man, outside of that, I feel as though then it became more of a timing thing, stamina. It's all these other intangibles. Mm-hmm. I think once you get to that mid 150s, that kind of shows how well do you really know the test regarding how it's really supposed to be taken.
Yeah, it can be diminishing marginal returns, but those are also the most important points to get because they push you over the threshold. It's 150s is really a requirement to go to any law school worth going to. But you got to get to that 160 plus point to get into better schools, get more scholarship money or both. So I think it's awesome that you gave it that extra push. I want to ask you a couple things about the application side of things. But first, You said you said you got to know your why, and you talked about it in your background what helped you keep pushing forward up to the application process. But then when it comes to why law school itself, why do you want to go to law school? What do you plan to do at Harvard and after?
A two-part answer to that, right? Childhood experience. My mother left when I was like 8 years old, right? And essentially, like the way she left like in a way where there was a lot of like my family had to suffer a lot of consequences, right? She just abandoned the family, went to Sri Lanka, stole a lot of stuff. It was crazy. And with that being said, like my dad lost his job afterwards, but the way she left, I found out at a very young age that it's not the truth of a situation that determines how you're treated. It's the perception of the events that determine how you're treated. Like it's always perception. Like for example, if I experienced a horrible atrocity and no one believes I experienced a horrible atrocity, then it never happened, if that makes sense from a societal standpoint. And then that means I don't get justice. I don't get, so it's just an event that occurred that no one will ever know about. Take that. After high school, part two to this question is when I was going to high school, I got denied by every single college coming out because I was focused on other things at that time. So every college I applied to denied me. Went to go work with the sanitation company. I found a really great support system there with my colleagues, right? And a lot of them were formerly incarcerated. And I just really felt so compelled for the first time in my life. People were uplifting me just for being a young guy, not because I was a great athlete, or at least a former great athlete at that point because I had an injury. Not because, no one judged me for doing bad in school. It was literally the people at the bottom who just wanted to raise me up. And just the fact that they were formerly incarcerated and they had their own views and experiences that they shared with me, I was just motivated to go into law when I found out I was academically inclined at Bowie State. So in my second year, sophomore year, I decided I wanted to go to law school once I found out I can do education. Because I was horrible at it in high school. I graduated with a 1040 SAT score out of 2,400.
So you outperformed your SAT significantly on the LSAT.
Well, it was all about having the resources and knowing what you're going for. At the time, I didn't even want to go to college. I didn't see a place for me in education. Matter of fact, I hated school based on the experiences that I had with the administration at mine. So I'm not going to make the claim that if you want it bad enough, it's going to happen. Because, I guess life doesn't necessarily work like that, right? But I truly believe this. If you have your sights set on a goal and you not just want it, but you put the necessary resources in place for you to achieve that goal, and you search out for those resources, you develop an action plan, everything will fall into place. I don't know what it will look like, but everything will fall into place and you'll get somewhere near there.
Well, that's very inspiring. And I can see the compelling nature of your story just as a living example of that. I do have one more tactical question, though, which is you mentioned all these experiences, which are a very impressive resume. How do you pull all of that together into your personal statement?
See, I just had to figure out how do I want to show my story. It's like, everyone could just tell something like, hey, I did this or I did that. And, but that's your resume. Your resume tells you everything. So as far as my personal statement goes, I just wanted to show, I illustrated an event that took place and how it got me to my end goal. So such as I talked about when my dad had a stroke, right? And I just remember, I started off, the thing was, it was in all caps. My first sentence was, I found him. He's at the hospital. Literally, because after my dad had a stroke, he was missing for like 3 days and no one knew where he was at because he drove himself to the hospital. You see, wow. I was like, my dad's one of those old school G.I. Joes, you know what I mean? So, and then from there, it just I described what my life was like in reference to from my eyes, I just talked about what my day consisted of and how that led to me being the commencement speaker. And I tried to illustrate that I can handle crazy workloads. I can handle, walking and chewing gum at the same time, meaning that I can handle multiple things. Throw whatever you want at me. I'm going to get the job done. And I'm not going to only get it done, but I'm going to thrive at the highest level. So I illustrated just how I was still managing that in the leadership positions, all the work. So it's really about showing and not telling.
Yeah. I can see how you tied it all together into a thread. And how long did it take you to write that statement? How many drafts did you go through? Did you get support from others for
Think
that? What
about
would that look
think
like?
about 13, 15 drafts, probably about like five, like probably like 3 months in total of
So
working on that thing.
you put in the work.
Well, see, the thing is, there's like this misconception that the LSAT's the hardest part of the test prep. See, I don't know if I'm like being really like cynical with that word hardest, because the diversity statement, the personal statements seem just as hard, because you have to make sure every word is perfect, make sure every comma is in place, and you have to just make sure everything's concise. And it was just hard, just like the LSAT. It was a process. And then you have to get different opinions. But then it's like, well, whose opinion do I take when two people disagree? So it was hard, man. It's hard. Diversity statement was super hard too.
There's no easy answers on writing, especially. It's just,
Nope.
It's never perfect. It's just good enough at which point you say, I can't really get it any better right now within my time frame. Got to move on.
100%.
So you submitted your resume, you did a personal statement, a diversity statement. Were there any other parts of your application that you worked on a lot? Letters of rec.
Oh yeah, the letters of recommendation, that was cool. So I always tell people, don't go with the people who you feel are the most prolific in your life. Just go with the people who know you the best, who will write about you as if they loved you. I was fortunate enough to work alongside of my dean for like 2 years, and we knew each other on a very good basis. I performed, I was there, she knew me very well, and she wrote me a great personal statement. I had professors who wrote me great personal statements, and I had to work. And I had at Bates, so by the way, at Bates, I wasn't just a garbage man. Eventually, I ended up becoming the assistant to the CAO of the company. So one more thing about the resume, I'm gonna just backtrack to that real quick. You'll see in everything that I did, like my resume told a story too. At Bowie State, you saw that I grew. In my work life, you saw that I grew. Even after work, even after I got sick, I ended up getting a job as a management consultant. So you see this story where he's a trash man. He's the assistant to the CAO of that same trash company. Then he becomes a management consultant. I'm the president of this. I'm the president of this. I'm on the dean's cabinet here, commencement speaker. Tells a story. Saying all that to say, so I had somebody in my work environment who wasn't the CAO. I had the manager who oversaw me when I was doing the trash work, my dean, and then I had a professor.
Nice. So they were direct people who knew you really well, not just the most impressive sounding person like a senator or a judge who might not really know you that well at all.
Again, man, I could have had the CAO of the company write me a letter. I could have had the CEO write me a letter, but I chose my manager specifically because he's seen the work. He's seen me balance school and everything. Couldn't
direct
beat it.
Experience. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. I love it. So I just want to ask you one or two more questions before we wrap up. I want to be respectful of your time, and I appreciate your sharing your story with everyone.
No problem.
One question is, so I asked you why law, and you talked a lot about like your deeper motivations, but I'm also curious to know, do you see yourself in a particular career path, a particular practice area of law upon graduating? Like what would you want to be doing 5-10 years from now?
So right now I'm going in pretty open-minded. I wanted to do public interest law at first and be the next Brian Stevenson and take that to a whole nother level, right? However, a little sad story is when I got sick, remember, I don't come from a affluent household at all, and I really couldn't afford the healthcare to actually get me better. And a lot of people don't know that part of the story either. So my dad actually had to choose between pushing back the mortgage and buying me food, not pushing back the mortgage and getting me health care, just pushing back the mortgage just to buy me food. Wow. And that's a pretty like horrible. When he got sick, I worked as hard as I did so that we could save the house, so it wouldn't it wouldn't go for foreclosure just because he got taken out of commission from a stroke. So literally, when I got sick, it was like everything I did was potentially for nothing, and we might lose this house. We didn't, by the way, but we might lose this house because I got sick. So with that being said, I just told myself I'll always give back to communities. I'll always do pro bono work. it just won't be my primary job, in life. Like, I'm not going to go the direct Brian Stevenson's route. So I'm going in with the open mind, and maybe I will go back to the sports world. Maybe, big law. Just gotta find my niche right now.
Yeah. Well, it's good to go in open-minded. A lot of things could change over the next few years, but I see that your heart's in the right place. At the same time, just due to the financial situation in this country in particular, there's a lot of things that aren't taken care of, like basic necessities are not guaranteed. And so given what you've been through and given how you've had to struggle and work and for your family too, it makes sense. You got to make sure that everybody's taken care of, especially if a medical thing comes up like happened to you.
100%. And, that stuff happens so spontaneously. You have to be ready for it whenever it pops up.
Yeah. And then in this world, even if it doesn't happen to you directly, it could happen to somebody you know.
100%.
Yeah. That's very reasonable. Makes sense. Last question I'll say is there anything else that you wanted to share with everyone, pre-law specific, with an eye towards the fact of who our audience is, given that maybe some of the mainstream media outlets aren't covering certain details?
I think I literally just covered the details with you in regards to what the media really wasn't covering. What I will say is I do believe that the LSAT is the most important part of the application, objectively speaking, right? I truly believe that, despite me having like a lower LSAT score, right? However, I really do want people to know that there are other parts of the application that really matter, like really, really matter. Like, for example, like a resume. Like, what are you doing with your time? Like, what type of person, because your resume can tell a story. Like, who are you? Like, what do you do? Like, let me see your volunteer work. Let me see how does that translate into the work that you actually do on a professional level? What organizations are you part of? Do you lead those organizations, or are you just a member? Your life experiences, like how well can you actually articulate an experience to make somebody believe, one, you belong in law school, and how you can just handle all of these crazy circumstances that just might occur in life in general on top of law school, right? So saying that to say, I do believe the LSAT's probably objectively the most important part of the application, but that doesn't minimize the other parts of the application as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you still got to give those parts your all, and you can write a super compelling personal statement. You can write an outstanding resume, but it requires putting in the work to present your accomplishments, your background in the best light possible. And the fact that you went through a dozen plus different drafts of the personal statement, you put in a few months, you thought very carefully about who's going to write your letters. Undoubtedly, all of that made a difference and helped you outperform your numbers.
Oh, can I tell you one thing I did for the LSAT score? I actually did something a little bit I think was clever. I truly think it was a clever thing. So my SAT score was a 1040 out of 2400. Way below average. But the SAT score is supposed to be an indicator on how well you perform in college. So I took my SAT score and made that a part of my application to say, I don't think standardized tests are a good way of indicating how I operate based on the success that I had in extracurricular activities and my GPA throughout college. So I just kind of like, all right, I know my LSAT score is a little bit lower, but so was my SAT, and my SAT was poor, but I outperformed people who pretty much got perfect scores at a Division I institution.
I love that. I love that idea. I've recommended similar in the past. Definitely anyone in that situation should write an addendum to show their standardized test scores don't reflect their performance in the academic setting. Some people do better in the classroom. They do better with assignments over the course of a semester or a year, rather than what happens on one particular day. Like you said, your practice test scores were in the high 160s, but you dropped down a number of points. You were at 168, went down to 161, but you could have been there, but maybe test day things happen, right?
That day specifically, I just forgot to eat breakfast. Yeah. I was so nervous. I forgot to eat breakfast. I will never forget it. After section 2, I was done. Oh my God. I was so happy Logic Game was the second game on that day. Because, man, I tell you, I was done. I was really about to cancel my score because I was like, there's no way I got a 161. Like, my timing was off. Those 35 minutes were going by fast as hell. And I literally was so surprised when that 161. I was actually really happy with it. I was like, all things considering, I'll take it. I would have retaken it if I didn't take it. Oh, I actually applied super late. I actually applied 2 weeks before the deadline for all those schools.
No way. No way.
Oh,
Wow.
and I didn't get denied by one school. I got accepted to Harvard, UPenn, Columbia, USC, Pepperdine. I got waitlisted by Georgetown, UCLA, NYU, and Berkeley.
It's a great list. It's a great list.
2 weeks, and I said 2 weeks before the deadline.
Dude,
So
that's
late
incredible.
January.
And I think it
Thanks,
just speaks
man.
to the power of your story. Dude, that's awesome, Dan. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. I'm sure that all the pre-law applicants out there are going to find it super useful and inspiring. So please keep in touch and let me know if you'd be willing to do a follow-up about your time at Harvard. I'd love to have you back on.
Perfect. I mean, seriously, man. I can't thank you enough for doing what you're doing. I mean, and one thing that I really liked about you in general. Sorry, I made the camera shake. One thing that I really liked about you in general, even because mind you, I've been here for a while. It's just like, you always like gave out a lot of free content. And mind you, people always, hope they could get something more personalized. But I understand how much, it could even take just to dish out all that free content. You know what I mean? And literally, I just can't thank you enough for being a part of the community to the extent that you are. I mean, you really do make a difference, man. I love reading your blogs too, your emails.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me to have been a part of your journey, and I'm excited to see what comes next for you. So I appreciate you being open to collaborating and being open to coming back and supporting folks moving forward. It really means a lot. It really means a lot to see people who've been through the process and come out the other side with all these successes that you've had. I think it would be hugely helpful to them.
Hell yeah, man.
Awesome,
Appreciate
dude.
you. I'm going to keep you updated. I got this other interview in 10 minutes. So again, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you reaching out, and we'll put that work in, bro.
Definitely, man. I'm excited to keep this going. All the best with your future media engagements and everything coming up. I know it's a lot. So do that. Just keep at it. You're doing fantastic stuff, and I'm looking forward to working with you, man.
Man, thank you, sir. Peace, man.
All the best. You will. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.